Hi folks, Mark and Marky from the Exiles. Today we're going to look at applying some of the sword in two hands plays from Fiore's art to Poleaxe. Okay, so we have some Poleaxe plays in the system, but we can use the rest of the system as inspiration for a bit more. Okay, so bear in mind Fiore's taking quite a big, sort of large assumed level of knowledge. And also the system is holistic, right? So we know we can use not just techniques, but also principles from other parts of the system and apply them up, okay? It's kind of why the system sort of pyramids. It's sort of adversary and dagger, kind of thought of as one. You know, sword, it sort of pyramids up because you're taking all the principles from underneath and applying them up for the rest of the system, okay? The adversary and dagger is the biggest section, so it kind of gives that away. So in this particular instance, we're going to keep it pretty straightforward actually. We're going to ignore the first bunch of plays a while ago, because those can be individual videos on their own, and we're going to look at everything from the Villano strike onwards, basically, up to exchange of thrusts and breaking of the thrust as well. So the first one, the Villano strike, we actually showed a little bit of that in a previous video, so we're going to start there and we're going to basically move on, okay? Set myself up, wait for the big attack, there we go, stepping over, and that gives me the next play. So, the villain strike, okay? So, he's going to swing in, I'm going to come forward and catch it, and I'm just going to let it run down, okay? From here, I'm going to basically wheel it straight over, okay? Nice and straightforward, exactly as we showed in that previous video, okay? The only real change is that I've got to come a little bit further offline just to get the hammer on target. Remember, he's going to be armoured, okay? And if he's not, this is really good. Catching it, letting it fall, I'm not taking it to ground, I don't need to go that far, disengage and then hammer over, okay? Remember, I'll be armoured too, so this will actually be, not the quickest action in the world. We'll both be a little bit slower because of all that armour and that restricted movement, okay? So that's the villain strike. The next play is pretty straightforward, it's where does he go? The next play is basically showing me about to thrust to his middle, and what he's done is he's made an almost complete turn around. The reason for that is because he knows what's coming now. That's why he's not uncontrolled. An uncontrolled person wouldn't even think to move out the way. They wouldn't be thinking that far ahead, so this goes back to the peasant idea. But this is basically the action, okay? I'm going to be thrusting here. Okay, so I'm beak up, he's coming in, I'm catching it, I'm letting it roll. Where is he going to go from here? He's switched on, he's going to start his exit, so I wheel over but I miss, but then I've got the big pointy bit on the top of the Poleaxe to stab into gaps in armour, to stab around the back. If he's in transitional armour, which he will be, he might not have anything protecting the back, certainly not down here, and so on and so forth. So those two plays, really, really straightforward, okay? The next play in the sequence is if he goes for my legs. So if we just grab a weapon, excellent. Okay, so if he goes for my legs, I'm just going to go for his head. I'm going to retract the leg, either with a step or just with a gather. Yeah, so there's a step, or I can just gather. Yeah, and I've got trigonometry on my side. Now, we know that with sword, at least, as an opening action, cutting for my legs is not such a smart idea, okay? Because of trigonometry, he cuts low for my legs, I've got a much shorter path to take for the head. There is a very good reason why at this part of the manuscript, in the sword in two hands, he does cut for my legs, but we'll get to that in the future. In either case, with a Poleaxe, it's a little bit more sensible for him to do that. Remember, we're armoured, limited visibility. There's a hook, there's a beak on it for a reason. It is to hook at things like the legs, so top of the guy over, so you can then smash him with the hammer. So it's not such a stupid target with a Poleaxe, okay? But there's two ways to look at it. One is just a clean way, so I'm up in whatever posture, he swings for my legs. It's exactly the same principles with a sword. Basic trigonometry dictates that I've got the shorter distance to target. So I retreat the leg and I swing at him with my Poleaxe. There's loads of different ways to dress that up. Remember, from the PD manuscript, everything after the Villano strike is the same master, so the reasons why he strikes on my legs starts to come out of that. The next play is in the sword in two hands is the kick from the crossing, okay? Exactly the same principle. Now remember, armoured, okay? Limited visibility. I've got a good amount of weight at the bottom of my foot with my sabatons, so that also starts to become a really key action, using the feet, okay? With me here, down on the shoulder, if I just let it float around, I'm not pushing into it, I'm very unstable. So when I lift my foot, if you push me on it, I've got very little stability. Very little stability. Whereas if we bind up, and I push into it a little bit, there's the hoop, but I'm very stable from here. Look, push. Yeah, I'm quite stable because I'm pushing into his body. It's just a little thing. Incidentally, actually, that helps me out when my feet land too. Because I'm not just going to kick him and say I've won, I'm going to carry on. I want this guy dead, right? So we've cut in, whatever, I'm here, there goes my hoof, but I can start to use that pressure to do other stuff as well, okay? Because the kick is not a fight engine. So you can get this in lots of different ways. We've smashed in, armoured up. I'm just going to send the toe punt in nice and low, okay? But because he's armoured, it's not, potentially not going to have the same effect as it would if he was unarmoured, like with the sword. So I'm not going to just rest on my laurels. I'm going to kick him. I'm going to use this to either disengage that way, back onto the hammer. Remember, he's going to have trouble seeing me moving away, with his limited visibility. Or I can start to be clever and come off on the offside. But in either case, whatever I decide to do, that's the play in isolation. We're crossing, right foot comes forward. Nice and easy. Okay? The next play in the Jacques Largo, the wide and loose, where we're getting the inspiration for these plays from, is the exchange of thrusts. So again, with swords, very, very straightforward. The only thing I need to really worry about is he thrusts at me, I take the centre, and I thrust back. Well, with Poleaxe, that's actually very, very straightforward. Okay? Into him, I'm going to find my own opening. Yeah. So I can start in lots of different positions, but as he thrusts, I basically just replace his point. So if he thrusts now, he's going to go way past me, and I'm basically just lining up my own. Okay? There we go. Okay? So I can do that from high, I can do that from low. Let's do it from high, but I'm here, bosh. Now, for me, I like to step backwards. With a sword, I generally step forwards to take the space, but there's a little bit more going on. I could step forwards, but again, having done this in armour, it starts to get a bit clunky, but there's a choice to be made, basically. I'm just replacing his point with my own. Okay, cool. Very, very straightforward. The next one is very, very straightforward. He thrusts at me, I look for the exchange, and then he just does the counter. So with the Poleaxe, he's thrusting, I'm taking the centre, but he takes the centre back. And how he does that, generally with a sword or a Poleaxe, is he comes back across the line and he just re-engages the point. Okay? So we're high, I take the centre, he takes the centre back. So the next play in the sequence, for sword at least, is to stop this messing around trying to fight for the centre. Okay? They thrust, I thrust back. We have to stop this exchange from happening, so we reach over, we grab hold of the weapon, and we stop the exchange. Okay? And we can do lots of things from there. We can't do that with Poleaxe, okay, because the distance is too tight. It's too much on the end of it to start passing it around my body as I look to try and grab a hold of their sword arm, in this case their Poleaxe arm. So we actually skip past that, okay? Which brings us to breaking the thrust, okay? So again, we've done previous videos on that. With the exchange, it's quite subtle. You're both fighting for the centre. With the breaking of the thrust, he's taken a central position where the point is a threat. I raise the arms high, thrust comes in, and I'm stepping like this, punta to mezza spada. This is basically perfect from the manuscript, because I've gone punta to mezza spada. Two options, we've got the play, which is false edge up, true edge down, or if it's gone properly to ground, step on it with the left foot from the Getty or the right foot from the Pisani Dossi. So that's the play that we're given, or the two plays that we're given. One, two. Okay, I come from high just because it's pretty straightforward, but effectively I'm now breaking the thrust. Okay, so I'm not exchanging anymore and breaking it. Lots of reasons why we do that. Okay, a lot of it is around distance and intent and his positioning. But again, to keep it nice and clean, very straightforward. Very straightforward. The only thing I need to remember is to bring the hammer forward. Okay, from here it's pretty self-explanatory. I can start to get towards an actual poleaxe play, which is to stand on the thing. Okay, as I look to do lots and lots of damage, whatever. Okay, but the play carries over very well into the poleaxe. So there you go. There's just a nice way of looking at just the examples we chose today. Some of the plays from other parts of the manuscript. In this case, there's the Jocko Largo section. Everything from the Villano strike, that master, everything forward to the next one, basically. With the break, which is what we've just done, there are some things you can play with, very similar to the way that it's done with the sword. But effectively, you can stand on their weapon, start hitting them, or you can disengage or not stand on it at all after the break, just re-engage the hammer just to start hitting them. Yeah. Also, when the weapon's down there, there's things you can start to think about potentially, which is I've broken that thing. Where's it going? Can I get this thing up? Can I start hooking at stuff? Can I start pulling bits off of it? But that's all for things to be explored in the future. But it's just a nice way of looking at some additional plays you can apply to Poleaxe.